well, welcome back to the Point of Order podcast, an inside look at California politics and the state legislature. I am your host, Assemblyman Josh Hoover from District 7, and I'm joined today by a new guest, Heath, Flora, Assemblymember for District 9, which includes the communities of Ione, Galt, Lodi, Ripon, Manteca. Heath is a farmer, a firefighter, and a business owner who was first elected to serve in the Assembly in 2016. He's also our most casual member of the Assembly, which I appreciate. I appreciate the garb today, man. That's great. But hey, welcome, Heath, and tell us a little about your district.
No, thanks for having me. Appreciate it. No, this podcast has been going well, so it's cool to be on it and help support you and what you're doing here. And I think it's important that people have an inside look at politics. I think for too long, they look at politics as for somebody else. And so it's nice to be able to bring it to the people and show them what actually is going on. And you're right, I am pretty casual because I am one of those guys. I feel like if I can't do my job, like how I would dress in the district, then I can't do my job in a suit and tie. So, so it's just kind of how I am. But no, my district, the Assembly District number 9, it's really from Stanislaus County all the way up into Sacramento County, covers 5 portions of 5 different counties, and Manteca being our largest city. We're primarily an ag region, very rural. So there's a lot of, when it comes to business issues that are thing, agriculture issues, Second Amendment stuff, like those are big issues in our district. People, God, guns, and country. And that is certainly the 9th Assembly District. Country. Yeah. So it's a good place to represent. I just love the new district.
I love it. Yeah. I love it. How is it different, quite a bit different from your old district, or is it?
Very much so. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So it's probably roughly 95% a new district.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is
I lost pretty much all of my old district.
Very interesting. Yeah. So for the listeners, I mean, it's we did redistricting a couple years ago now and had a lot of shifting of lines throughout the state. Every 10 years we do that. And it's so getting used to a new community. That's great.
No, it's awesome. But it fits us very well, and our staff is very adept to rural issues. So it's been fun. It's a good district for us.
I know we kind of share. I think my district. I think we might even share a border somewhere.
We do.
Because Because do you have Rancho Murrieta? Or
I do.
Yeah. Yep. So I think that's where we meet in Sac County.
Absolutely.
So that's great.
And I bump into Assemblyman McCarthy, Kevin.
Yeah.
So I touch a lot of people up here.
Yeah.
It's fun.
No, it's great. No. So, and you and I just actually did an ag tour recently too. Mm-hmm. And I think some of that was in your district.
A lot of it was. Yeah. Where we had lunch.
Yeah. So it's just, it's great to have you on the podcast. I mean, we usually just kind of go through a few different segments here. We start with like a recap of the week. Obviously the big story off the top is hurricane, or I guess now tropical storm Hillary, which is the first tropical storm to hit Southern California since, I think, 1939, I think it was, which is pretty wild. Yeah. I just, we don't have to stay on this for long, but I just wanted to basically just hope everyone's staying safe down there. And if there is any help needed with recovery or whatever it might be, to contact your local assembly representative or Senate representative. But have you heard anything else about what's going on down there?
No, just seeing pictures and texts with colleagues, and I would just encourage everybody in those regions, those areas, to reach out to your elected officials. That is our job. Our job is to represent you, and we can make phone calls on your behalf and try to get the things that you need. So certainly reach out to them. I think, recovery is going to be a thing. Stay safe. I mean, if there's an evacuation for mudslides or anything like that, like just heed those and do what they say and stay safe, and we'll help you recover when the time is, right.
It is. It's crazy seeing some of the cars that are getting stuck, and
it's nuts.
It's like, man, you got to be careful right now. So hope everyone's staying safe. I know we've got colleagues working real hard down there for their districts, helping people prepare for the storm and find sandbags and shelter and all that stuff. So the next story I wanted to chat with you about, I don't know if you saw this, but I feel like it's an ongoing trend. So the governor last week tripled CHP enforcement in Los Angeles to combat retail theft. Mm-hmm. There's a number of different, I think, aspects to this story, but it kind of just begs the question, like, what are we doing? What, like that we need to send the CHP into Los Angeles to combat retail theft, which is not their job. It's just crazy. What are your thoughts on it?
I think it's adorable. I think it's just it's a feel good thing. Like, so they're going to combat it. What are they going to do? There's still no penalties.
Yeah,
there's no punishment for their crimes. So we can send all the cops in the world down there until you're going to prosecute something. Then what are we talking? And let's be honest, these retail thefts, I mean, they're going into storage units. These are massive criminal operations. Mm-hmm. I don't know, when it falls in the line of a RICO charge, if that's what they're setting this stuff up for, which I kind of doubt it. But for me, it's just one of those things. Like, we all know the solution to the problem, and start putting people in jail and make their consequences for your actions. And until we do that, it's going to be the same old story, different day.
It does seem like a very surface level move, right?
Totally.
And the Mayor Bass came out and talked about how we got to crack down on this and all that stuff. And it's like, great, but you can say all the words that you want. You can send, like you said, all the police that you want down there. But if you don't have actual, anything to back it up with,
no,
what's the point?
It's absolutely crazy. It was probably been 2-3 months ago. I was at Target with my daughter. Yeah. And, a gentleman had a shopping cart loaded up, and he, walked by us a few different aisles. And then we were at an aisle next to an exit. And all of a sudden he just bolted out past us and just ran straight out the door. Crazy. And it's just like, nobody even does anything. It's just, they watch him go. And I really do. It's frustrating, because at some point, public danger, it's just going to continue to be a problem.
Yeah.
And it's just like, it's almost like a right to steal from people, because like they're just going to collect insurance. So why do you care?
Yeah.
Well, that's not really.
It's victimless crime or whatever, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, no, it's really crazy how that's really infiltrated the culture at this point. And we're kind of allowing it, right?
Totally.
I mean, we're encouraging it in some ways.
And then now you go and try to buy deodorant, and you got to, buzz somebody over to unlock the deodorant.
Oh my gosh. Well, I think we, I don't know if we talked about it on the podcast, but like there was a video, I think it was in San Francisco, where they were locking up the freezer sections. Just chaining freezers closed.
It's here in Sacramento as well. Like, it's almost easier to buy bullets than it is deodorant right now.
It's so crazy.
Like, it's crazy. Like, it's nuts. So,
and there's another aspect to this too. The CHP is understaffed. Mm-hmm. So I think they're like 900 officers down from where they need to be already. And anytime you pull the CHP off to do something else, that is less time that they're spending on their jobs, which is patrolling our highways. But more importantly, in my district, half of my district's unincorporated, right? We don't have cities in all parts of my district. Mm-hmm. So they don't have local police forces. They've got the sheriff, but the CHP provides a lot of assistance for unincorporated communities.
Totally.
And you don't get any of that.
Absolutely.
So I think that's the other thing that really frustrates me about this. Is just CHP is not there to just use however you need to use them.
And I don't know the answer to that. Like, why CHP? If it's in LA County, why wouldn't you just activate LA County Sheriff or LAPD? Like, why wouldn't you use the local government and rely on them and just turn them loose?
Maybe the governor just feels like CHP is the only law enforcement agency he has power over or something, control over, kind of.
It is.
Because it is. Right.
It is. And I really do think it's just more of a feel-good thing. I really don't. I mean, it's something that he can go tout that he tripled, CHP presence, and everybody's like, great.
Yeah.
And then it happened again, like 3 times in the same day.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, that's the problem, because I mean, we know CHP is going to do a great job with whatever they're sent to do, right?
100%.
They do a fantastic job, but it's just something to do when you refuse to actually change any policy.
Yeah. It's
it's like.
It's almost like that shining a light over here. It's just like that shiny object. Don't look at what the actual problem is. We're just going to focus on this over here. And meanwhile, this just keeps boiling over. And, some of our colleagues that have, been in the legislature with us that have moved on to local government positions, it is very interesting when you ask them about some of the policies that we've enacted as a state, from when they were from a state official and now local government trying to enact those policies. It's a very, very different sheet of music.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
And, that is where I think, coming from the state perspective and then into a local government perspective, not everything is exactly how it seems. And, we can kid ourselves underneath this. I mean, I've said it a lot of times, like a lot of good ideas underneath this white dome. They seem like a really good idea until you actually have to implement them. And then you're like, crap.
I mean, we get to local government. I mean, I was in local government before this, and you hear from people a lot more directly, a lot more often, I feel like, at the local level, and it spurs you to action, right?
Right, totally.
And when you're here in this building, like, I think a lot of people just forget that they either came from local government or they're just too set apart to really understand what's going on in their district.
Absolutely. And I think not to get off this topic, but we've sort of failed like in the school system teaching civics.
Yeah, for sure.
Like, I bet you if you ask, 20 of your neighbors, 15 of them wouldn't know what we do in the state assembly.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how bad it actually is. And I think, I came up from public safety myself, right?
Yeah.
And, I've always used this analogy, like nobody ever calls 911 because they're having a really good day, right?
Yeah.
Nobody ever calls a public official's office because they're having a really good day. We are usually the last resort, but people don't know that we're there for them for that, right?
Yeah.
Like that is actually our job. Constituent casework, I think, is the most rewarding thing that we can do.
Absolutely.
From that perspective, because you can make somebody's bad day a little bit better.
Yeah.
Like that's a big deal for people,
Yeah.
And so I think a lot of times like people don't understand that is actually our job, like to call us. And so, which is why I have about this podcast, because I think this gives an idea of like, we can come and talk to people and like, just say, hey, like we're here for you.
Yeah. This is what's going on. I mean, seriously, I think some legislators think that they were sent here to pass laws, but at the end of the day, I think the number one priority is to help constituents navigate, state issues. And that is, I can get lost, right? When you're here spending all your time in Sacramento.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's very, it's an interesting story. Speaking of 911, and by the way, tangents are fine on this podcast. I don't really care.
Tangents.
Yeah. You're welcome to go on any tangent you want.
Well, that may happen.
But I toured an EMS facility recently and actually sat down with a dispatcher and basically plugged into some 911 calls, right? And man, I mean, I had no idea how many people call 911 for like non-emergencies. Yeah. I mean, it's incredible. Yeah. So that was eye-opening.
Yeah.
That was really eye-opening.
And it is. I mean, you mentioned dispatchers, like they are really the unsung heroes of really the EMS service in general. I mean, those men and women that answer those phones. I mean, yeah, you go from somebody, that stubbed their toe and they're trying to decipher this to instantly a life or death situation, or domestic violence or whatever it may be. It's a huge thing. And sometimes I do feel like they're a little bit like, I don't want to say looked over, but we don't always
underappreciated, maybe.
Certainly
right?
Underappreciated, right? And I think that they have an incredibly challenging job because,
oh my gosh.
I mean, mental health within, the public safety is a huge deal. And I do think that that's a huge part of it is dispatchers. So it's cool that you brought them up.
Oh, no. I mean, it was honestly getting like a window into their job was amazing. And I was talking to her just like, how do you sit here and do this all day? I mean, they're literally on the phone the entire day. Yeah. And they have to react so quickly, and know exactly what to do. It's incredible. So shout out to them for sure. Cause it's, that was really cool. And I know you come from that world as well. So
absolutely.
So last story in our recap, a third DA recall is brewing, in California as, Pamala Price in Oakland oversees what actually the Oakland NAACP recently wrote this letter and described it as an intolerable public safety crisis. I don't know if you've been following this story at all.
I have.
But I mean, we meaning, the citizens, right, attempted to recall Gascon in LA. That was unsuccessful. Successfully recalled Chesa Boudin in San Francisco. And now in another major city in California, we have a recall effort underway. Yeah. What's it going to take to wake up these DAs to actually do their jobs?
I don't think you can. I think it's a mindset, and I think, it's interesting that so Alameda County, which is the county that she's the DA of, one of my good friends is the chief of police for Livermore.
Okay.
Grew up together. We're pretty much family. And he took her to task publicly. He was the first chief of police to do that. And he is just very much, he came from Modesto City PD, went over there. But it's fascinating when you talk to these guys. I mean, her unwillingness to prosecute anything, it's just disgusting. And I do think the citizens of the state of California are about to rise up in the polls and start doing something different. I think, not very often do we see an issue that polls so well. Yeah. And it's not a partisan issue. Like
right. No, it's not at all.
No. If we cannot keep our communities safe, nothing else matters. I mean, it's that simple. The very fundamental pinnacle of our society is the safety. We're not doing that, and so if we don't hold these people accountable, then we expect more of the same.
Yeah, no, it's so true. I mean, I was just looking through this article on this topic, and there was this big neighborhood meeting where they were demanding kind of action and answers, right, on why there's this disturbingly pervasive carjackings and assaults. This one woman saying, "I voted for you, but I don't feel safe here." She was pulled out of her car at gunpoint, in her community. I mean, it's like, people are just shouting for action on this. And what's crazy about it is this DA has the tools and the research. I mean, certainly policy has tied the hands of law enforcement in a lot of ways, but there are still ways for DAs that want to make their community safer.
Totally.
There are ways to do it. And we're seeing it in communities like Sacramento County, like,
San Joaquin County,
right? Where DAs are actually getting creative and finding ways to stop crime and make their community safer.
Yeah,
this is the opposite.
Totally. And I don't want to speak out of turn, but, I'm fairly close with the, San Joaquin County DA.
Yeah.
And he's a great guy. He's a great friend. And, he was like literally talking about getting creative. That, street racing is a big deal in Stockton, right? So his idea, and I don't know if it's ever going to actually happen, but I think it's brilliant. Speaking of, there's a cause and effect for everything. If you get caught and your car gets impounded, they're going to crush your car.
Wow. That's wild.
I mean, you crush a couple cars, it would only take one or two times. And I'm pretty sure that they'd probably think twice, right?
Wow.
And it's that kind of stuff that, like, to your point, like, we have to get creative because there is no punishment. We're not going to put them in jail.
Yeah.
So what's the next thing? Take property.
What's another way to ensure accountability,
right?
Or ensure consequences for actions?
I took it a step further. I said they should be the one to push the button.
That would be hilarious. I mean, it is. Last week on the podcast, we talked about our new DA in Sacramento, Tin Ho, sent a demand letter basically to Mayor Steinberg saying, you got to clean up your streets, clean up your homelessness, or we're going to start looking at litigation. And, again, it's a creative, some people are calling the threat. I think he's doing exactly what he was elected to do, which is keep his city and his county safe and ensure accountability of local electeds and, the people are following the laws.
It is a threat. And that's okay. Like, I mean, you get pulled over from CHP and they say, hey, bozo, like, if you keep speeding, you're going to get a ticket. Yeah. That's exactly what he's doing.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
I guess when you put it that way, I think the SACB wrote an editorial or something on like, the DA wasn't elected to threaten local officials. It's like, no, he was elected to hold them accountable, which is what he's doing.
Yeah. And he was elected to keep his citizens safe.
Yeah.
And if the local officials aren't, then he's going to do what it takes. And I support that completely.
It's just so in response to this recall, effort, so Pamala Price said in an interview that she was honoring her actions. She was honoring voters' mandate to dismantle an abusive and discriminatory system. She pointed to disproportionate rates of incarceration. A lot of the talking points that we've heard, but like not a single thing. She talked about fighting racism, but didn't talk at all about fighting crime.
Right.
It's like, in places like Alameda and Oakland, the victims in those communities are people of color. Like, you're literally not representing and keeping safe the people you claim to care so much about. And it's just so incredibly frustrating.
No, it's the fallacy of their argument, right? It's them being controlled by, quite frankly, special interest groups.
Yeah.
It's that simple. We can go into the weeds on why, but it's just they're powerful special interest groups, and it's an ideology. And I know we're going to talk about it in another segment, but it's the same thing about SB 14.
Yeah.
If we can't actually make, child molestation, child trafficking a serious crime, we don't need to talk any further. Like, that's how lost we are. Yeah,
there's no way to have a conversation.
There's no way to reconcile that,
right?
It's okay. So if we can't even protect our kids, then why do they give a crap if somebody steals a car?
Yeah,
right. So there's no reconciliation then.
Yeah, no, it's a great point. Well, on that note, let's move to our segment where we're kind of looking ahead at what's coming towards the legislature over the next week or so. We've got this big bill. I think we've talked about in this podcast a little bit before, but AB 1228, which is this fast food it's a bill on the fast food industry that would essentially make franchisees and the corporate company that they're a part of jointly liable basically completely change the franchising relationship. I know that you've been pretty up to date on this bill, but this bill actually stalled, which I think was a good thing. I was very opposed to this bill, and it stalled in committee. But now there's talk in Politico last week that they might try to bring it back in a late session play. I don't know if you've heard anything about that.
Yeah, I have. I would be very surprised if SEIU didn't push this thing further.
Wow.
I think that they are going to turn this bill into almost like a purity test. If you don't support it, you don't support labor. And that just couldn't be any further from the truth. I consider myself a very labor-friendly Republican.
Yeah.
But I absolutely oppose this bill.
Oh,
right?
It's a terrible bill.
It's a horrible bill. And the harm that they're doing to franchisee owners, and this idea, like, and the crazy part is what they're referencing, the issue wasn't even in the state of California.
Right.
It was outside the state.
Yep.
And so it's not even an issue. And everything that they're arguing about in this bill is already protected in labor law. Like it's a totally waste of time. Yeah. But it's, I think the SEIU feels like they have such the majority of Democrats in the, that are elected that they can just jam this stuff down and get this stuff pushed through. Now, I mean, the referendum, I'm sure you've heard about that. There's potentially something going to the ballot, which don't quote me on this number, but I'm pretty confident, franchisee owners have it somewhere between 30 and 50 million already set aside on this stuff. So, I mean, it's going to be a huge fight.
It's going to be a huge fight. I think I'm really hoping that any effort to bring this fast food bill, AB 1228, back fails, because I've heard, and you probably have too, from so many franchisee owners in my district, McDonald's owners, Arby's owners, I mean, you name it, right? Across the spectrum, Chick-fil-A, whatever it is, that say this will fundamentally change our business model. It will fundamentally harm our livelihood. And we talked about this. I talked about this on the podcast with Vince Fong a few months ago when it was still going through committees. This is an industry that's 37% women owned. Mm-hmm. This is an industry that has, people from all backgrounds that have been basically lived the American dream through franchise ownership.
Absolutely.
Right. And it's just like, and we're bringing the hammer down on it for what?
Yeah.
It's just incredible to me.
No, it's a joke. And it is because, I've been fighting PAGA, private attorneys. I've been vice chair of labor this is going on my 7th year now. Since I've been elected, I've been vice chair of labor. I'm not sure who I ticked off to have that.
to be given that role.
Exactly. It's my own personal purgatory, I guess. But I enjoy it because a lot of stuff, like I can try to find balance. And, a lot of times, our, Chair Tony Thurman was my first chair. In labor, he was actually very good at trying to find consensus, and where he could, he would.
That's good.
Some of Colorado the same way, right? So, at least there's opportunity to try to have those discussions. Yeah. But on this particular bill, the only people that this benefits is the private attorneys.
Yep.
And if anybody really wants to look into these PAGA lawsuits, the settlements, these workers aren't getting paid. It's not about the workers. It's about private attorneys. I have filing cabinets full of copies of pay stubs of what the employees are getting and what, the attorneys are getting. The attorneys are making 6-7 figures in some cases. I literally had a case where the attorney made 6 figures, roughly $400,000 on the case. The employees got a check for 42 cents.
Unbelievable.
This is not about workers.
Yeah.
This is about private attorneys.
Yeah.
This is about PAGA. This is about legal extortion.
Well, and if you think the workers are going to be better off too, by the way, being under a corporate structure versus being under basically a small business owner who cares about every single one of their employees, I think that's the crazy part too. I don't even think the model that they want to go to is better for workers.
Oh, my family's in small business, and every single one of our employees is like family. Every single one of them can walk up to my dad. Or my brother, and have a conversation with them. People don't understand that, the small business, the family small business, they treat their workers as best as they possibly can. And I would argue, and I don't know the numbers off the top of my head, but if you polled a lot of the fast food workers, they probably don't want this bill, would be my guess.
Yeah.
It has very little to do with workers. It has everything to do with, labor leaders and private attorneys.
Yeah, it's funny. I toured a McDonald's actually in my district with Senator Roger Nilo a few weeks ago, and kind of got to see the behind the scenes and all that good stuff.
Did you make a burger?
And I made fries.
Nice.
I made fries.
They didn't trust you to flip a burger?
I don't think they trusted me with the burgers. Yeah. But yeah, I got to make some fries. But, I was talking with some of the workers, right, as we walked through, and most of the ones, I mean, this is anecdotal, obviously, but they were all against the bill in that particular location. But a lot of it was because of the opportunity they were given by the owner of that store, right? For advancement, for management opportunities, for, they literally, a lot of them started at the bottom, cleaning the floors, and we're now running other, restaurants. I mean, it's just like, this is the opportunity that you have, right?
Absolutely. You take take like an In-N-Out.
Yeah.
I mean, their upward mobility is second to none in the fast food world. I mean, they do a really good job. And a lot of times those managers, they go on to open up their restaurants. Yep. Same with McDonald's, all of them really. And so like this idea that somehow, business owners are out there actively hurting their employee, I think is just this fallacy. And like being on labor for as long as I've been on labor, I don't believe, and this is where I get a little bit, salty. The business community for a long time and really like ag as well. Yeah. Like out of sight, out of mind. Like, why would I engage in politics? Like, screw that, right? Right now, you absolutely have to engage politically. Like, we need to hear from you because there is a narrative being painted about the business community in general, and it is wrong. Yeah. And we need real life people. I mean, Cal Chamber does a great job of representing the business community. CMTA does a great job of representing, and Farm Bureau and everybody else does this great job. They need support. Yeah. They need help because they're losing this battle. And, you and I can sit on labor committee and we can make all the arguments in the world. And when there's nobody behind us supporting us, like then our Democratic colleagues are like, well, why is this that big of a deal?
Right. Right. Yeah, that's true.
And it's like, well, we're telling you, we promise you it is. Like, well, they don't care enough to show up. So,
and so many people don't even know what's happening. Yeah. Right. And that's the challenge.
Meanwhile,
right?
labor is the opposite.
Yeah.
They bus in, SCIU, they wear their purple shirts. We call them the grapes. They'll bus in 200 people. Yeah. To push their agenda. Yeah. And so good on them. Yeah. Right. I mean,
that's the process, right?
Squeaky wheel gets the grease.
But it's really interesting now that you mentioned the, kind of we're talking about how the small business owner has those relationships with their employees. There's so many efforts in California from the majority party to kind of push workers to these larger hierarchy structures. It's very weird to me. I mean, we see this as we've described in this bill by kind of eliminating and making these corporate stores basically. But then you also see it in the rent control space where you're pushing, a lot of these policies to push more rent control in California that literally pushes out like mom and pop homeowners that are renting to people that have a heart for their tenants. Right. And you're pushing those homes or those, buildings into the arms of corporations. And it's just like, this is the opposite, I feel like, of what we should be doing because, you want those more intimate relationships between your landlord and your tenant or whatever, or your employer and your employee, and it's just crazy. I feel like our policies are going the total opposite direction.
They are. They're absolutely, they're not achieving, what they're after at all. And even like on rent control. I mean, what happened right after the first rent control bill passed? Every property owner went and raised their rents.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
because they knew they weren't going to be able to, right?
Well, it's just like when you pass, stringent gun laws, you see more gun sales, right? It's just, Yeah.
I mean, the gun industry, the best thing that ever happened to the gun industry was the Obama presidency.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's just facts.
Yeah.
So
it's really interesting. Yeah. So you mentioned it a little bit earlier, but SB 14, it is I would say high priority bill for the two of us for sure. Yeah. It's authored by Senator Shannon Grove. So basically, to summarize the bill, and we've talked about a little on the podcast, but it would essentially make human trafficking of a minor a serious felony in California, which essentially means that you could count it as a strike under the 3 strikes law. I don't know if you have more thought, a better explanation for it, but I mean, that's kind of it in a nutshell. This bill sailed through the state Senate 40-0 on consent, didn't get a single no vote, didn't even get an abstention, and got to the Assembly Public Safety Committee, was promptly killed in the Assembly Public Safety Committee, which I think shocked everybody.
Yeah.
And to the credit of our new speaker, Robert Rivas, and the governor also engaged on this, basically called for a redo. And I will say you and I engaged on this a lot too. Mm-hmm. Our caucus was very loud. I know the public engaged on this. They came out and I think the outcry was so great that action had to be taken to reverse this. Got a redo on the bill, sent it back to committee, passed the bill reluctantly. And, which is great. But the problem now is it's now in the Assembly Appropriation Suspense file, which for anyone that doesn't know how the suspense file works, we get all of our bills through policy committees. They get to a fiscal committee, which is the Appropriations Committee, and then they get debated on their costs, right? And any bill that has a cost in the Assembly over $150,000 goes to the suspense file. The problem with that is everything gets dealt with in secret, and I feel like we never know what's going to happen with this.
Yep.
So what are your thoughts on does this thing get out of suspense? I mean, what can people do to help get this thing out of there?
Oh, I think you laid it out there very clearly. SB 14, I think in the 6.5 years that I've been elected, was the single greatest political disaster for a majority party I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Absolutely tone deaf. Like, if we cannot agree that harassing kids, trafficking kids is a serious felony, then I don't know what we can agree on. Yeah, like, it's so basic to me. And the idea that we allowed a chair of a committee for political reasons to kill a bill like that is asinine. And you're absolutely right. Like, listen, I have my disagreements with the governor all day long. But I applaud him greatly for engaging on this. Robert Rivas, who I consider a very good friend, I applaud him for engaging on this and forcing that issue. Our caucus did a great job of holding their feet to the fire. The public outcry is absolutely that's the support that we're talking about. It's really nice. Because one thing politicians hate is getting beat up, right? I mean, we don't appreciate that. We're human. We're emotional, right? That's not something that's fun. So that was a big deal. And then for it to go to suspense, which we weren't necessarily surprised about. Yeah. But some of the part that's worrying me is we're hearing, there's amendments that are going to be taken, or, it was just going to be there to be parked. Yeah. I can tell you right now, from a caucus perspective, and I do not believe I'm speaking out of turn. Yeah. If that bill does not come out of suspense, unamended, as it is. Yeah. We are going to bring down hellfire and brimstone once again. Yeah. And I can't imagine the majority party wanting to go through that again, because we'll make it this even worse.
Well, why go through all the work of pressing your committee to re-vote on it if you're going to kill it in suspense? It doesn't make any sense.
I don't know. And that's why I don't believe it's going to be held. Yeah. I really don't. My worry is there's some sort of amendment that may be taken. Shannon, Senator Grove has said that she will not accept any amendments. So if that stays true, but I do agree with you. Like, for the governor to weigh in and for our speaker to weigh in, for it to just get parked in suspense doesn't make a ton of sense.
Doesn't make sense.
No, because you did the right thing.
Now you're going to get beat up twice.
Exactly.
It just doesn't make sense. No. Yeah.
But I will say we are prepared.
Yeah. Well, I'm hopeful, but I would encourage people to call the Appropriations Committee and just say, pass SB 14. Yeah. I mean, they need to hear from the public too. Yeah. But I agree. It's interesting. One of the arguments against it now in appropriations, because it's now, you're moving into the fiscal arguments, is, well, it costs a lot of money to lock people up. Well, okay. Fine. Yeah. I'm sure every taxpayer in the state would be happily spend taxpayer dollars to lock up a child trafficker. For life, hopefully.
Yeah. No.
I mean, it's just crazy. It's like, yes, this is what our taxpayer dollars are for, is to keep our community safe.
The idea that is even, you're right. It is expensive to lock people up. True. Okay. Next.
And
what's your point? Once again,
it's crazy.
Are you okay with kids getting trafficked? Yeah. Because if you are, then have that train of thought. If you're not, then let's move this thing on. This is one of those bills that is so mind-numbingly simple to me.
Yeah, I know.
Like, it's just absolutely asinine that we're actually even still having this conversation. If we were in control, I can guarantee you we would have wharfed that thing to the floor and voted it, got it to the governor's desk.
Urgency measure, whatever it took.
100%. And the governor would have signed it 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
So that's,
it's true. It's true. It was interesting when that bill got re-voted on. I actually happened to have my daughter in town that day, just because it was supposed to be a quiet day. And so she was
did not turn out to be
and
quiet.
It did not turn out to be. And she ended up going to the committee with me, watching the revote, which was she doesn't realize how crazy of an experience that was now, but it was an interesting experience. And then walked out to Senator Grove's press conference, and Shannon was like, "You got to put her right next to me." And we were all like, so my daughter's in all the KCRA and all the local media shots, and Grandpa was texting her about, her being on TV. It was hilarious. But I thought it was good for her to see, her government. And as a kid, she's 11, so she might not realize it now, but I think it's a good lesson for her to see, like, hey, this is what happens when you acknowledge a mistake, you fix the mistake, and you do the right thing. And I think it's important to see our government do that.
Absolutely. And I think it's also important that people understand that, Republicans, we are in the super minority right now, but we still have the ability to affect things.
Totally.
And if our caucus would have went quiet on that bill, it would have died. Right. And so, our leadership, Gallagher and his staff, and, did a great job of just, our comms people just pushing that message out there and really righting an egregious wrong. And I will say that I have a ton of faith in Speaker Rivas that, this bill is going to get out. But I don't think it's bad for constituents to reach out to Probst and let them know that you think it should get out too.
We can't take it for granted at this point.
No.
So, looking forward to updating folks on that as we move forward. I wanted to talk about one more thing with you, because you and I recently went on a tour of some hydrogen, industry companies, clean energy companies. And I know we kind of talk about this a lot, but there was this interesting article in Politico. Is this the end of the hydrogen highway? And so I won't spend too much time on this, but essentially there's a bill going through right now, AB 241, that I don't actually love, because it taxes basically registration. It places registration fees on drivers to fund a lot of this technology. I think a lot of my constituents have a problem with that bill because it does increase their costs, right? Increase costs on their vehicles. And but that being said, this bill is going to pass, right? That money is going to get taken. And now the question under the bill is they're having essentially support for hydrogen technology and moving it over more to electric technology. I'm not here to advocate for one technology or another, but I just wanted to ask you, kind of what your thoughts are on hydrogen, and does it have a place in the future of our clean energy economy?
100%.
Yeah.
Now, I think one of the biggest frustrations that I've seen, in the last number of years is, and I've been very fortunate to travel all over the world, looking at all these different clean energy, projects.
Yeah.
And it's very, very interesting to me that pretty much the rest of the world accepts all forms of clean energy, whether it's solar, wind, nuclear, hydro, geo, right? Hydrogen, like all of those we accept. California, we like two, wind and solar.
Yep.
And if we are going to meet the governor's goals, we have to be able to use some of these other renewables. And hydrogen is a huge, huge, some people don't like this term. I don't quite understand why, but I see it as a bridge fuel. Do I think we're moving into electrification in a decade? We're going to be able to use battery powered tractors. Sure. I think that technology will get there, right? I mean, if you look at the last 10 years, what we've developed, so go another 10, I think we're going to get there. But right now, that technology does not exist.
Yeah.
So it just simply doesn't. Hydrogen does.
Yeah.
And so if the environmentalists really care about the environment, I would just encourage them to quit letting perfect get in the way of good.
Yeah.
And we were just so married to, and listen, I got no issues with the solar industry. I got no issue with the wind people. None. That's great. I just think we need to open it to all other energy sources.
It is interesting. Like we have these goals in California that we have put in place to that are very aggressive. Like why wouldn't you unleash the free market to compete and win? Why pick winners and losers? It just seems counterproductive to your goal, which is to make a cleaner economy, right? And I feel like we have this opportunity in California to just unleash the free market on this.
Well, I mean, I think it's something that your former boss, really took to task with special interest groups.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And I think that that's something that all of us need to be very cognizant of.
Yeah.
Like, listen, my family is an ag. I'm not arguing anymore the governor's goals. Those days are past, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Our issues, our communication with CARB, really, when I got elected, Assemblymember Adam Gray kind of did a lot of the water stuff.
Yeah.
And I kind of went into air. So I've dealt with CARB a lot more than I've dealt with the water board. But our goal with CARB is like, give us the carrot versus a stick approach.
Yep.
Like set that goal.
Yeah.
And then allow industries to go meet that, right? We're smart. We can figure that out. The engineers across all these industries will get there, but allow them to do their jobs. Yeah. And quit putting these constraints around it, and there's legislation, and then again, like the San Joaquin Valley Air Resource Board, dear friend who runs that place, Samir, he fights tooth and nail, where the Central Valley has absolutely made the biggest strides in clean air over anywhere else in the state is in the Central Valley, right? But every stinking year we fight over funding with the Bay Area, with LA, on like putting in bike lanes, and like, okay, fine. But like, if we actually care about reducing NOx and carbon dioxide emissions and all of those things, right, then we need to focus on where the biggest emitters are and fund those projects that are actually working. Yeah. So,
no,
you said I could go off on a tangent.
Hey, no, it's all good. I'm good with it. I mean, to your point, I think there's a major difference, and I would like to see our policy shift here between incentivizing the clean energy future and mandating it. Yeah. And in this state, we love our mandates. This legislature loves to mandate winners, losers. They love to mandate goals. But you can't make this happen overnight without harming the consumer. You can't make this happen overnight without negative impacts, right? And I would love our legislature to shift gears and incentivize clean energy, but allow the free market to do what it does, which is explore and compete and develop technology. So
and if people make money off of a particular widget, like that's not a bad thing,
right?
It means it's working, right? And so like let's do that. And you get asked, I certainly get asked all the time, like what is like the biggest thing in politics, right? Yeah. What changes the most in politics? And it's two words, and it kind of has to go into your mandate, but shall and may. Yeah. Those two words change everything, right? Yeah. And when you hear shall, that's a mandate.
That is a mandate, and we have a lot of shalls in our
yes, we do.
in our legislature this year, and a lot of these bills we're debating, unfortunately. So. Well, I appreciate that. I think that's an interesting topic to keep monitoring. And, I'm just hoping that particularly when it comes to like the long haul stuff, and the bigger vehicles, hydrogen just makes so much more sense right now than the electric technology, just from a technology standpoint, not necessarily that, one's bad, one's good, but, it'll be interesting to keep watching how that develops.
Absolutely.
So moving segments, and then we're getting near the end here, but we usually just talk about something just for fun. So you and I are both playing in the legislative softball game tonight, which benefits some great charities in our community up here. It's Northern California versus Southern California. We're both on the Northern California team, thankfully. I think we're gonna. But who do you think is going to win tonight? I just want to get your take.
I mean,
and this is going to air after the game is over. So
Northern California. I mean, it is going to air after the storm is there. But like I know, like some of our colleagues are probably not going to make it up for the game tonight. Yeah, that's which is a little bit disappointing because I feel like it's going to like hamper the year's worth of bragging rights that we're going to have. So, but I still I'm still going to brag. Yeah, but Northern California.
Yeah. No, and it's. I think our team's definitely better.
Yeah. So well, We're Northern Cal. We're hardy.
We are hardy. We're pretty competitive too.
Yes.
It's actually been funny watching how seriously everyone takes this. I pulled a hamstring like my first practice.
Did you really?
Because I was trying too hard.
Yeah.
I'm like, man, I need to really calm down. One of our colleagues came up to me and said, you need to stop playing like you're 25.
Yeah.
I'm like, I know.
Well, no, it's like most elected officials are built to play chess now. So competitive softball may or may not be our thing anymore.
It really isn't. You think softball isn't that big of a deal, but you can get hurt playing softball.
100%. It's like I saw the statistic on like the number of energies that's up in pickleball.
Yeah.
And I feel like softball and pickleball are the same sort of that same like genre. Like but yeah, people are killing themselves over pickleball, like Achilles tendons. And so what'll be interesting is the over under on how many injuries are tonight. So.
Oh, that's a good question. I'm hoping 0, but I think there will be a couple.
I think there's going to be 2.
Okay.
2's my number.
Okay. Two's I think that's pretty, I'm still hoping for 0, but it does make me nervous and hopefully nothing too severe.
Yeah, no, I mean, a hammy, a little black and blue.
And hopefully I'm not one of them.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Well, we'll see how that goes. We'll report back next week. But so last segment here, we do a clip of the week. So I will play you this clip and I want to get your thoughts.
Okay.
Just to set it up, Governor Newsom launched last week his family agenda for schools and for California. So I'll just say that for now, and then we'll get your thoughts after we hear the clip.
There is no state. I'm going to make this claim. It's not a claim. It's not even an assertion. It's just a simple, fundamental fact. There is no state in America that supports local control and parental engagement like the state of California. No one comes close. No school system in America requires more parental engagement and local control than the state of California. That's why Jen was right to refer to this as the family freedom agenda. There's simply no system in America that's transforming public education like the state of California.
So there's no state transforming public education like California, and there's no state that has more local control in education than California. What are your thoughts on that?
Does he understand that like archive video is actually a thing? Like people can go back for the last 36 months and give hundreds of different, I think it's a joke. Honestly, it's like, and it's insulting. And it's interesting. If you hear what he said, this is a family freedom or family agenda. Which there's freedom in there. Yeah. Freedom. What's the sign on his podium say?
California's family agenda.
Yeah. Nothing about freedom.
Yeah.
And I think that's actually a very interesting thing. Yeah. Like this is not a freedom agenda for families.
Yeah. So he put out on his Twitter page this, infographic overview of it, right? So it's California's family agenda and it's California's overhauling education. So the bullet, it's all freedom. The bullet points are all freedom, right? So it's freedom to decide. So all parents, yeah, right. So all parents deserve to share in key school decisions. Okay. Freedom to thrive. All students deserve a fair start in life. Freedom to learn. All students deserve to learn about the world and themselves. Freedom to succeed. All students deserve to build real life skills and a career. This is one of the most Orwellian press conferences I've ever watched. Yeah. I mean, I was like, wait, you're literally saying the opposite of what you've stood for the last, since you've been elected, basically.
No, didn't he just sue Temecula?
He is. Yeah. He's cracking down on these districts that are passing local policies.
No, I really I worry about the governor in the sense of he speaks out of both sides of his mouth all the time. Yeah. So I'm just curious, what poll did he read that people are really sick and tired? I mean, it sort of to me feels a lot like CHP going down to crack down on retail theft.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like he realizes that's polling really, really bad.
Yeah.
Parents today, we're recording this, on a Monday. There's a massive, protest at the Capitol.
Right across the street.
Right.
Yep.
Going on right now about freedom for families. People are tired of the state telling them how to raise their kids. We did it for 2.5 years.
Yeah.
And for what? What?
I think that's what this got me really worked up when I saw this press conference. I mean, I was in my office just
well, it's a little bit insulting.
It is insulting.
Like, it's insulting to our intelligence. Like, do you realize we watched you on TV for, 36 months?
Every week.
Yeah, every day.
And, I served on a school board during the pandemic, right?
God bless you.
I mean, and there was no local control.
No.
I can tell you from personal experience as a parent and a school board member, there was no such thing as local control.
Directly opposite that. My local school boards in Ripon wanted to bring back the kids sooner, but they were scared to death of what the state would do to them if they didn't, or if they did.
The state was quite literally, and this isn't hyperbole, threatening districts that didn't follow state guidelines. And the reason they could do that is because they have all the funding. Yeah. They were literally threatening to pull funding from districts that didn't fall in line with everything the state was trying to do. And the state literally put out a school shutdown order. And it was one of, I can't remember how many states actually did that, but it was the exact opposite of local control.
Yeah. Well, I think it's something that it's very obvious right now with, and I'm very careful. Like, I have a lot of Democratic friends who I love dearly, but the progressive left that I think is controlling the state government right now, you only have the freedom of choice as long as you believe what they believe.
Yep.
Period. And I think it's that simple. If you don't believe what they believe, there is no freedom. There is no freedom of thought. Everything that they preach, across all different sectors of society, it's, your choice, your choice. Nobody should be able to tell you what to do except as long as you believe with it.
Yeah.
Period. And I think that's a problem.
Just two of these bullet points alone, freedom to decide. I mean, we have been fighting, in our caucus for years on school choice, making sure that parents have access to, obviously high-performing charter schools, also high-performing traditional public schools, right? I mean, we want all schools to be thriving. There was an effort a few years back to crack down on homeschooling. We defeated that effort, right? We want parents to have options. We're not trying to pick winners and losers here. No. We just want parents to be able to pick what is best for their child.
Yeah.
And so freedom to decide, I'm like, there is no freedom to decide. Every time a charter school tries to get authorized in a district in this state, they get tons of opposition. And so it's just, and we have made it as hard as possible for charter public schools to exist in the state. Yeah. And then freedom to learn. I mean, we are 50th in literacy, and I know I've said that statistic a million times on this podcast, but our students are not learning.
No.
And you can have that freedom to learn by having the freedom to choose what educational option fits your family the best. And it's just insane to me.
Yeah. I mean, I wasn't the best student. I never really got in trouble, but I was just bored out of my mind.
Yeah.
Right. And, it wasn't the teacher's fault. It wasn't my parents' fault. I was just like bored. I just wasn't having, I was ready to go outside and chase something. Right.
Yeah.
But to think that all students, we can put them in this cookie cutter box, right. And give all of, with the freedom of choice to take that away from the parents.
Yeah.
And just put them in that little box. No, it doesn't work anymore. It doesn't. We are all created differently.
Yeah.
Right. And that's okay.
And we learn differently.
We absolutely learn differently. I'm very much a hands-on person, right? I am not a guy that's going to sit down on the couch and absorb a book.
Yeah.
I just not how I roll. Right. But if I can do something with my hands, I am good to go.
Yeah.
And so I think this idea of just this cookie cutter approach to raising our children, this cookie cutter approach to do what the state says because they know best is absolutely a fallacy.
I think it is fascinating that he launched this the same week that they're cracking down on school districts in Southern California for decisions that were made by their communities that elected their school board members.
Yeah.
It's just incredible. And I think, we'll see. Oftentimes the governor launches these announcements and nothing ever happens with them. Yeah. But it does seem to me like just a total media play.
Honestly, it would be really awesome. And if he would, but since he's all about, freedom for families agenda.
Yeah.
Well, there's a big freedom rally across the street right now. Maybe you should go speak at it and explain to everybody over there how much he supports their right to choose.
Tell him what he's doing for them to have choices in education. Right?
There was 20 times as many people at that rally than there was at his press conference. So I think his audience would be significantly bigger.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great point. All right. Well, hey, we'll wrap up on that note. Do you have any final thoughts?
No, I just appreciate it, and I am excited about these podcasts because I really do believe, I try to get along with everybody. I know you're a very congenial guy as well. Even with the governor, we have disagreements with him, but it's not personal, right?
No,
it's just over policy issues. But the more people understand how government works, how Republicans and Democrats work together, work with the governor's office, I do think that the California government, as crazy as it seems at times, we are really good at what we do. We are pretty collegial. And we do have honest and open debates. And I think people need to take comfort in that. And I think it's part of our job to relay that our system is not broken. We actually have a good system of government in California, and I'm proud to be part of it.
Yeah, it's been interesting getting to know my colleagues, especially as a freshman,
totally.
and finding that, hey, I can actually talk to most of these people, have good conversations, right? And I look forward to continuing that for sure.
Absolutely.
No announcements this week. If you want to share ideas for future shows, you can email pointoforderpod@gmail.com. You can listen and follow on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, watch or subscribe on YouTube. You can also follow the podcast on Twitter or X. I don't know what you call it. Instagram, Threads, and Facebook at Point of Order Pod. And today's co-hosts, you can follow on Twitter for myself at Joshua_Hoover. And then for Heath at Heath Flora CA, I believe is your Twitter. Thanks for coming on, Heath.
Glad to be here. Appreciate it.
See you again soon, hopefully.
Yeah, absolutely. Appreciate it.